and I am the host of the Art Club. Today will be the last episode for this schedule, but we will definitely be going out with a bang. It's going to be so much fun. It's going to be great. So today I have a very special guest with me. He will introduce himself right now.
Awesome. Hello, everybody. My name is Alexander Smith, and I'm so excited to be here on this final program of the season.
I know. It just so happened a coincidence with like the last one. So I was like, yes, this is going to be great.
Perfect.
Okay, so today we are going to be talking about your artwork, and this one is pretty much, it almost like, it's very coincidental with last week's show because I talked about Pride Month. And
Oh, awesome. Okay.
yeah, I talked about Pride Month, and I talked about different artists that talked about problems in the LGBT community, and one of them was when the HIV epidemic was going on in the 80s and how the government wasn't doing much. And
Right.
I'm having you today.
Excellent. I'm honored and grateful to be here.
Yeah, so, what's your artwork? What do you...
Okay, cool. Yeah. So, well, I'm kind of like a jack of many trades. I have been very creative ever since I was a little tyke. I'm actually 45 this summer. So I do a lot of meditation and yoga, and I believe it keeps me young. I like to eat a lot of plants as well and stick to the earth. But art, music, creative stuff has always been a big part of my life. And I've actually done quite a few different things over the decades of my life, including classical piano. I studied theater and music and acting. I have written all kinds of things, from a screenplay to poetry to, I'm working on a memoir, but it's just killing me. And I've heard that that's what memoirs do. They try to kill you. So I put it on hold last summer and decided I would do some poetry instead, which has been super awesome. And we can talk about that if you want, because the poetry I would love to pair with the painting and the artwork. So for me, I tested HIV positive in 2003. And that's where we met. I'll go ahead and tell them I came to one of your classes. I work for Radiant Healthcare, which used to be the Orange County AIDS Service Foundation. And they've now expanded their services to meet more people than just HIV/AIDS, since things have changed quite a bit for HIV and AIDS. And so they have asked me to be one of their storytellers, so to speak, to be a speaker, because stigma and living with HIV and AIDS today is still there's still a lot of things to address, and stigma is one of the big issues. The mark, people feeling isolated and different, and how they're treated as well, and the miseducation about it. And so my art, in the last few years, I've been really focusing. I started in 2005 with watercolors and pencil. And I had always had great penmanship as a kid, but never anything into painting or to sketching figures. And so I was really frightened about entering that world. So I did it anyway, and I had some encouragement from friends and different people. And so then I just kept learning and going through my own journey with the virus, with HIV first, and then an AIDS diagnosis in 2008. And then from there, I moved from Salt Lake City, Utah, where I was quite a bit of that time, most of it, and came here to California in 2012 to change my career, to try some new things. And part of that was going online and sharing about my experience with HIV and AIDS and how I've kind of learned to become friends with it, how I've learned to use creativity, art, music, meditation, yoga as a means to strengthen my immune system. So now in 2018, like, my art is just kind of exploding. And so you asked me about something I mentioned when I spoke to your class, which was taking my HIV medications, which are called antiretroviral therapy, which the acronym is ART, and mixing those with my paint to create a show or an exhibit and some pieces to put what I have experienced in the last 15 years to art. So there.
I know. Once the moment that you said that, when you came to talk to us, I was like, yes, like I have to like try and talk to you and
Great.
reach out, and like hopefully you'd come here.
Yeah.
And now we're here.
I'm here.
I know. I really do think that you're a great storyteller.
Oh, thanks.
It was like amazing. I had no clue what to expect. Like, I went in And she was like, we have a guest speaker today. And then at the end of it, I was just like mind blown. Like,
Oh, thank you.
it was just like this whole journey of like emotions, and like it was actually like really like informative. But it's just like at the end, you were just like, there's like so many different ways that you can be a human, and it's so cool to learn from other people.
I so appreciate that. It wasn't always that way for me because, as you heard from my story, I had a lot of years of darkness and being really down and struggling with drug addiction. And so at this point, I've been sober, like 12 steps, and, like accepting the drug addiction that I had built up in my life. And it's very different where I've been the last 3 years. And so to hear you reflect that back to me, I'm very grateful because that's my intention is I want to share what I've learned. And there's been a lot of crazy stuff with this. And it's a topic of huge viral proportions.
Okay, so, how did you like get the idea of using the antiretroviral therapy medication into your
Okay.
art?
Awesome. So one of my beliefs about art is that the creative intelligence is something we all have access to. And as I've gotten more into putting art and my story online through social media websites and kind of going into the online ocean and the economy there, I've heard a lot and I've reached out to learn from experts. And it's very common to feel nervous, to have all this anxiety, to want to be perfect. Oh my gosh, am I stealing people's stuff? Oh my gosh, I'm just a copycat. I'm a fraud. This is, it's so common, all of that. And so I've been taught, as well as studying and practicing, that this creative intelligence is something we all tap into. And that perhaps maybe creative intelligence chooses us and spends some time with us. And if we're willing to follow it and say, yes, I'm in, then we can collaborate for a period of time. And so in some ways, I don't necessarily feel like this was my idea. It's my story. We all have a story and we're all being encouraged to share it. I know for me with art, I always feel like I'm replicating or I'm copying, and especially in the beginning, now I feel like I'm starting to create some of my own stuff, including this project. And part of the idea was, well, these meds have been such a pivotal part of HIV/AIDS journey for me. Because in the beginning, up until 2008, when I had that AIDS diagnosis, I took the meds and I didn't want to take them. I was very angry, resentful, and bitter, and I had a hard time kind of accepting that this was my diagnosis, HIV, that I was doomed to take medicine. I mean, and if you flip it on its head, like people were dying before 97, from 1981 to 96, 97, until this sort of cocktail, this art, this antiretroviral therapy started working in that manner. And then it was like a miraculous cure, so to speak, because people were now living with it. And so for me, I was very angry and upset. It was very hard to, I guess, be humble enough to look at the whole equation, how it came into my life, what it meant, what I didn't know I thought it meant, all these layers, the stigma, the guilt, the shame, the religious baggage I brought. And so then in 2008, when I received, when I had developed AIDS or progressed to AIDS because my immune system tanked, then I got on the meds, and I'm holding here a jar, and I'm shaking it so you can hear them, because this was like $25,000 probably of medications. They're so expensive.
They're very expensive.
Yeah. And so I kept a bunch of them from one friend who had extras a couple months, and from when I was transitioning from a new cocktail a couple times, because I've been on about 3 different regimens. And so I took it with gratitude, and that's what you see on the outside of it is gratitude. So from 2008 till now, I'm like, oh my gosh, I am so lucky. Like, people literally were dying to get to this, and I just am taking this for granted and acting like a spoiled brat.
I mean, it's different when you have to take medication, like when you have a flu or something, like very minor. Because I know that there's a problem where you stop taking medication and they're telling you, like, no, you have to take the whole thing. But it's different when that's your commitment. That's the rest of your life. That's a part of you now. It's a part of your schedule and your routine, and pretty much so that you can keep moving forward. And so it's very difficult when it's like your life hangs on, or it consists of you, like, taking this.
Yeah. Yeah, well, life hanging on is a really good one because if I don't take these, I will progress to AIDS. My immune system will tank. I would die. I will eventually develop opportunistic infection. So I mean, it's not a poor choice of words on that one, you know?
Yeah, so I could see why you'd be frustrated.
Yeah,
And
thank you. Mm-hmm.
it's just like it's such a heavy thing. There's so many things that you can't be prepared for in life. And I think that's one of
Right.
the things that
Yeah.
when your health is at a point that
Yeah.
it's you can go to a doctor
Mm-hmm.
and even then, like, you don't know if they'll judge you or if they'll like be pessimistic. You never know what you're gonna receive, and even from yourself, like, you honestly have to rely a lot on yourself and really like move forward. And I think that you've done that so well. I really, if I didn't know any better, I'd say that you're like so in all aspects healthy. Like, you're so happy and you're so lively and you're like always doing all these things. Like, I think when we talked, you were going to go see Hamilton.
That's right. We went to
remember.
Hamilton that night. I was a little disappointed, to be honest. The hype didn't live up for me, but I want to see the original cast, but it was still great. Yeah. Well, thank you. You know, it's true. Like, I agree with you. In some ways, I feel like in the last 3 years, I've somewhat become an observer of my life more. And I kind of credit that to meditation. I have a very interesting, curious practice for formal meditation. I love mindfulness. I love to teach and talk about it. And this is what has, I think, culminated for me to be here now, where it's like I'm watching this all happen. And it's because I think I'm learning to train my mind through some of the different practices that I've chosen. And I do feel really happy. And my current doctor, has said to me, I actually left Orange County to go see a doctor in Hollywood, a gay doctor, a gay man, because the doctor here prior, he was like this 60-year-old straight guy. And it was like I was in the Stone Age talking to this man. I'm like, what are you doing, Alexander? Like, you are the divine healer and physician of your body. There are so many doctors available. Get the hell out of here. And so it's true. I am here and I feel very joyful. I like to use the word joy because to me, happy's like, what does that mean? Because my joy incorporates a lot of the depth of what's happening around the world that is aware to me because I am actually trying to pay attention to other people. So
That was like so. Ooh, that was really good. I like how, joyful, not happy, because that is true. There's
Right.
like so many books like, what is happiness? What is the meaning of life? How do you become happy? Like 30 steps on 30
Yeah.
days. But if you actually joyful, it's more of like in the moment. And it's like it's an everyday thing. You don't have to monitor it. It's if you feel it and you know it, then it's there. And then happiness, it can be anything.
Happiness is like, can be so fake or just like a filter or like, and joy to me incorporates and makes room for everything. Like, joy makes room for my sorrow. Like, joy makes room for my addiction. Like, joy makes room for the years between this 15-year like HIV/AIDS thing for me, where I was destitute, where I felt completely separate from so many people. I felt invisible. I felt terribly afraid, worried. I got caught up in drugs. I was in addiction. I was so many things. And, I have such empathy and compassion. My heart's moving more open. And that's what this art has become about, because I don't know, when I speak and use words, sometimes it just doesn't work. And I thought, well, why don't I just use art and music? And why don't I keep returning to HIV/AIDS? Because I know I'm the white guy who's blonde and privileged and fair skin and curly hair under this scarf. And I know that women, again, are huge. Children, people of color, are worldwide most like crippled from HIV/AIDS still. And so if I can lend my voice at this point, I am so willing to give back, because I don't know, I feel like I've had so many second chances on so many other avenues. I don't really feel like I actually had a second chance with sex and coming out and having, in my first few years and my first few sexual experiences is where I met the virus. And it was very weird for me. But at this point, I feel like I have so many second chances, like particularly from drug use. Yeah.
I know. You've been through a lot of, from what I remember that you were telling us, and
Right.
your whole life experience, and
Yeah.
how sometimes there's just so many unexpected things, and this was one of the expected things that you said,
Yeah.
that you could either take it with hatred or you could take it with grace.
Yeah. Hatred or grace. That's beautiful. I love the word grace. There's my quote is pulled up right here from, so when I moved to California from Utah, my initial move, I resigned from a position as a clinical director at Salt Lake Community College. And I resigned because I initially wanted to move on to campuses talking and sharing this story of HIV and AIDS and what I'm learning. But the truth was is I was still kind of plagued and riddled with addiction. And ultimately, it cracked its head and cracked me open and threw me down at the bottom. And I thankfully had the willingness and the honesty to surrender to something greater and to a very proven plan of 12 steps and recovery in that manner. But when I was first moved back to California, I found Martin Luther King Jr.'s quote. And so it says, as my sufferings mounted, here Martin Luther King is talking about his experience. As his sufferings mounted, I soon realized that there were two ways I could respond to my situation, either to react with bitterness or seek to transform the suffering into a creative force. I decided to follow the latter course. And in no ways am I saying I'm Martin Luther King Jr. I'm saying his life and what he represented inspired me to turn my bitterness and the suffering from the path I was in into this creative force. And you're like a complete current version of that, where I was in your classroom based on this new opportunity where I'm just giving back. And then you're like, oh my gosh, come on the radio. And I'm like, okay, hell yes.
I know, and you just had like a way with words, and I remember like when I almost went up to ask you, I almost like immediately wanted to back out of it, because the girl who went before me, like I don't know what moment you guys are having.
She was we were having a moment, right? Did you feel it and see it?
Yes, I was like, like I'm gonna cry. I'm not even involved in this.
I know, right?
Yeah, and then I was like, oh my god, he's gonna notice that I'm crying, and he's probably like so used to this. He's just gonna be like, oh, another sobber. And I'm just kind of like, okay.
No, the ego in me, the performer and entertainer, loves it. It's like, give me more. No. It's. I don't know. At this point, I think it's amazing. Actually, it's being part of that creative intelligence where now I'm willing to be like a participant as opposed to the director of it. You know, where I'm willing to be like, oh, I'm not in charge of all of this, right?
Yeah.
I feel like that's what makes art so interesting, you know, because I've heard some other artists say, well, if you don't do it, someone else is going to. And so there are other people who have used their blood, HIV positive blood, who are, I don't know about the meds. I was doing a little search, and I'll put some of this on my website if people want to follow the links and see some of what we're talking about. But there's a lot of interesting art that's, well, we're being kind of inundated with art and stories online, but people have done some of this. And so at this point, my task is to find the courage to keep doing it, because I'll be like, oh my gosh, it's already been done. I'm not going to do it like theirs. And I can't do that anymore. I've made a commitment to participate. And so I've already started. So if people follow my Instagram to my website, I've already kind of set up a few things where I'm accountable, and I have picked like 8 to 10 pieces that I'm now going to move forward, recreate, repurpose, do over on a different medium or a different background, and mix with the meds and the paint. And I may have to branch out from my watercolor preference to like include acrylics. And then I'm going to do a show. I'm going to do an exhibit, right? I mean, this is happening. Pinch me.
I know. We're going to stay up on that.
Yeah.
So.
Will you hold me accountable?
I will. So then I can like come up here and be like, everyone, we have to go see this.
Right.
Like, I got him here, so we might as well go and see this exhibit. And we're like, it's the fruition of it. It's how, things sometimes like, you don't even know that they'll happen, and they happen. And you might as well enjoy that it all came to be. And just appreciate that things came to be in place.
Exactly.
So, do you know like what topics you're going to be painting or like what subjects?
So, I was going through the stuff, and what it feels like to me is that December 1st is World AIDS Day. And when I resigned in Utah from my position at that college, I ended up getting a gig to be their keynote speaker on December 1st, World AIDS Day of 2011. And it was a really awesome, like, public performance. I used monologues and music and words. And so that was, 7 years ago. So I feel like World AIDS Day is always a starting place. So looking forward, like, what can I get done this year before World AIDS Day? I'm kind of booked until September with a bunch of projects. So maybe like 2019, because every year around World AIDS Day, it's like people come alive to really be. I mean, I do this 365 days a year, but on December 1st, it seems like there's a moment, there's a window where the whole rest of the world is willing to be open. And so I feel like I would love to have a show where I have 10 to 20 pieces of art where the medicine is crushed and worked into the fabric of the art and the texture. And any live sort of performance or type of event, where there's perhaps like a collaboration I'm open to, but I'm willing just to let it go and find a voice of its own. But so far, like, I have one piece that's like my dad, where it's called Daddy Drag, because I've developed a really close relationship with my father, which is pretty unusual for a lot of gay men. And then, like, I have a piece that is my ex, my one relationship, my boyfriend, and he ended up dying. We talked about that in my classroom presentation. He ended up dying several years ago. We had been broken up for several years. And I'd love to pay tribute to him because I met him the very day I was diagnosed in 2003. And he kissed my hand and gave me this beautiful kiss to offer compassion because he knew what it felt like because he was positive too. And so I feel like it's going to have people, and it's going to have like fantastical, like Ariel is part of it from The Little Mermaid, but kind of like a real crazy version of Ariel because, her anthem, Being Part of Your World, was always so meaningful to me when I was younger because I felt like such an outsider. But it's funny because my story, I think everyone can reflect to it. That's what I'm starting to realize is mine's really sort of dramatic. Like when I'm talking out loud, I'm like, wait, this is like intense kind of. But then it's like when I look at you or I start getting the feedback that's coming now, it's a reminder for all of us that, well, for me to remind you that, pain is pain. And your pain and my pain is the same stuff. And if I ever think that my pain is different than yours, then I think I'm missing out on compassion for you and me. Because if I don't see you and me and likewise around me, then we're never going to come to some sort of better world or better love.
That was deep. That was really deep.
Do you need me to be less deep for a minute?
No. So,
I know. Yeah.
but I love it. I think it's so insightful, and it's always good to have like that mindfulness. So right now we have 2 minutes left.
Okay.
So, is there anything that you would like for everyone to know? Just something that you want to share with us, something that we don't already know, or just something for us to take home and just carry with us.
Oh, sure. So most of you don't know that I used to be really good friends with Johnny Osmond and his wife and kids because they used to live here in Irvine, and I went to high school here in Irvine at Woodbridge High School. And so they were close friends. I taught their kids music, and it was really fun because I got to go to his production of Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat and go backstage and like meet him and hang out with him in his dressing room and put on his wig when he was the Pharaoh. So that's something you don't know. And if I were to say one thing to do, just do your art, follow whatever creative stirrings in your heart are calling you forward because you're going to worry about being perfect and that you're not ready, and just do it because your life starts to just magically unfold if you follow that.
Okay, thank you
Yeah.
so much for coming today.
It's my pleasure.
It's been so much fun. It has just been such a journey in these these brief 30 minutes, but still, it's so
Thank you.
so meaningful. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
and Viral Mindfulness is where you can find me at Instagram or .com.
Yes, go and check it out. Go follow him. Go stalk his Instagram. You can go like
Stalk
his
me,
pictures.
stalk me, stalk me.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm gonna have to let you guys go. This has been Alexander and Alejandra today on the Art Club. You are listening to KUCI 88.9 FM in Irvine. Right now, Calvin is gonna come on and he's gonna enlighten you all. And I hope you guys have a good rest of